Jesus Christ. Well, Colbert was never really a stand-up, so, I mean, I guess he has that.
No, but I mean...
But he was a comic when the Colbert Report was on. I mean, that was hilarious.
It was really good.
He was great.
Yeah.
He was great. And that show was a great takeoff of a pompous, ridiculous Republican.
Exactly.
I mean, it was really good. And then when you see this, you're like, wait a minute. What are you doing?
Right.
What the fuck are you doing?
Imagine having Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly destroy your entire reputation in the same week that Stephen Colbert believed he was hosting a comedy show. It turns out that he was the target of public smackdowns and smug grins. The Late Night King was recently tagged by Rogan and Kelly, which led to a complete identification dilemma. Why is Twitter eroding more quickly than his ratings, and what did he say that led to the takedown? Hold on tight. This is the Colbert roast you were unaware. You required.
Appearance on Stephen Colbert last night was next level. He's so gross. So gross. I remember the Stephen Colbert who tried to just make us laugh, who is like kind of fun, and who, while we always knew he was leftist, didn't realize he hated the other half of the country.
The spiritual mascot of smugness, Stephen Colbert, America's favorite late-night lecturer disguised as a comedy show, went from being a comedy genius with a razor-sharp parody character to giving nightly sermons to an audience that laughs at the sound of their own moral superiority. Somehow this man went from making fun of blowhards to actually becoming one without even realizing it. That's regression with applause.
Did you see what happened with Colbert's audience?
No.
CNN is a joke to people in the audience. Watch this.
He knew his attack lines on President Biden, and he's not really sure how to go after Vice President Harris, 20 years younger than him, who is a different gender, a different race.
I know you guys are objective over there, that you just report the news as it is.
Is that supposed to be a laugh line?
I wasn't supposed to be, but I guess it is.
The audience is like, shut the...
Colbert's late-night stage has transformed from a place of humor to a pulpit where smugness goes to multiply and nuance goes to die. He is like the human equivalent of a motivational LinkedIn post, except that he wears glasses, drinks lukewarm Chardonnay, and thinks that repeating White House press releases with jazz hands is brave.
It is so smart. He said Colbert came up and made his name playing a loving portrayal of a sort of useful idiot, a sort of dum-dum on the right who meant well but was, a real idiot. And now he's playing a useful idiot in a very loving portrayal of the left, a real dum-dum who means well but doesn't know anything, only he doesn't realize it.
And Joe Rogan, who records podcasts in a room so dark it appears as though he is going to call forth demons, has somehow turned into the beacon of sanity next to Colbert's cult of performative virtue. Joe may occasionally speak between eating, elk, and lifting kettlebells, but at least he always ends his sentences with a question mark. Colbert speaks as though he is the physical incarnation of a time when he wants you to hear him rather than hear him.
Colbert from the show was this genius parody. Now he's just Stephen Colbert.
Right.
That's who he is.
They destroyed the essence by giving him something.
The best example of it was when Jon Stewart came on. And Jon Stewart was doing that bit about the lab leak theory. And Colbert is jumping in and stepping all over it.
Right.
And I'd like to see some evidence of that. Like, he's like fucking up the bit. Clearly, Stewart, who's a great comic, is in the middle of a bit.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And Colbert's trying to, he's like, you could see the panic in his eyes that this is not going along with the narrative. So he's hamstringing the bit.
Right.
Which is crazy to see.
Yeah, because his whole body is like physically mortified by the idea that he's sending off the...
After a news career in which she confronted everything from woke mobsters to the Trump cult, Megyn Kelly looked at Colbert and remarked, "That's not journalism. That's karaoke for Democrats." And when your biggest political joke every night is, "Orange Man bad," delivered with the emotional range of a used car commercial, she's not incorrect. You're selling merchandise rather than speaking truth to power.
You look at this.
There are quite a few billionaires who support you. You are from Northern California, after all, where they grow them in fields out there. Who's your favorite billionaire? Because we all have a favorite billionaire. On three. 1, 2, 3. Oprah. I'm sorry. I claimed Oprah. You can't take her now.
What's happened to him is what happens to virtually every news personality and late night personality and host of popular shows, podcasts, etc., which is they start getting invited to parties with Jennifer Aniston, etc. And they start thinking they're finally one of the cool kids. And then they drink the Kool-Aid. It's amazing to me that he would embarrass himself that way and that they would think it's good politics to get up there being so chummy chum about how close they are with billionaires like.
Would you expect a political satirist to disparage all politicians? Let's take a look at the Colbert material dump. Stephen filters his humor as though they were passing through the TSA. If they make fun of someone who isn't Susan Collins, they won't get past security. Watching his program is like listening to a barista reprimand you for not knowing your own pronouns quickly enough. You're there to get jazz hands correction, not to have fun. Colbert now recites political scripture with a laugh track instead of making jokes. He could even use a fart joke to solicit funds for his campaign. What a treat. Meanwhile, Rogan, the meathead with a microphone, manages to interview scientists, doctors, UFC fighters, philosophers, comedians, and even those who disagree with him. You came for comedy, but all of a sudden you're stuck in a sermon about climate, change, inequality, and why you're not woke enough to be in his audience. In his notion of a daring interview, Colbert gives Anthony Fauci a standing ovation before he ever says a word. Stephen last questioned someone's opinion when he inquired as to whether or not their tie was a bit too purple.
There's an interesting cat, man.
Yeah,
he's a bunch of things rolled up into one because he's a legitimate Catholic. Like, he's really Catholic.
Yeah.
Despite all the scandals and kid and all the craziness. And then on top of that, he's this character, but now he's not the character anymore.
No.
Now he's like a guy who's not totally playing the character, but the character comes in and out like little shadows.
Yes, it does.
And it's like, what are you? What's your real thoughts on things? Because I know you as Colbert.
Yeah.
I know you from the Colbert Report, this hilarious fake Republican guy.
Yeah.
And now I'm seeing you. I'm not sure what's going on.
Joe Rogan conducts his show as a curiosity-driven dialogue, while Colbert conducts his as a TED Talk, presented by a conceited high school valedictorian who believes that sarcasm can be used to replace facts. You can practically hear the inner monologue, "I am a smart boy. They will always give a clap." Megyn Kelly, who now has the freedom to actually call out hypocrisy wherever it lives, couldn't help but point out that Colbert is basically the human version of Twitter virtue signaling. He wraps every joke in a blanket of moral superiority, like he's afraid the audience might think for themselves. She's seen White House press briefings with more skepticism than his interviews remember. When late night was about comedy, now it's therapy for urban liberals who need confirmation that they're better than their Midwestern cousins. And Colbert is the therapist, a therapist who interrupts your session to show you a clip of Biden eating ice cream and calls it statesmanship, when Rogan wants to talk about CO. He brings on doctors when Colbert wants to talk about CO. He brings on dancers dressed as syringes. No, seriously. He literally turned vaccine promotion into a Broadway number. Nothing says trust the science like jazz hand sequins and nasal swabbing choreography that wasn't satire. It was a fever dream from someone who watched Rent on mushrooms.
Left-wing New York City audience brought some truth to the matter. Watch.
Trump has kind of been thrown on his heels by this, and he's not really sure how to go after Vice President Harris. He knew his attack lines on President Biden. He really has struggled with how to go after someone who's 20 years younger than him, who is a different gender, a different race. It's kind of been this moment where he has not been able to coalesce around a single attack line.
I know you guys are objective over there, that you just report the news as it is. No, I know. CNN makes it. I know
that's supposed to be a laugh line.
I wasn't supposed to be, but I guess it is.
Unbelievable. How humiliating and good for that audience. They knew that was a...
What's your favorite emoji? Is just one example of the way Colbert worships political power. It's like watching a court jester forget he's not the king. This is a man who engaged Kamala Harris in confrontational conversation. At his resignation press conference, Nixon had fewer softballs, but don't worry, the studio audience erupted in laughter because it seems that satire now involves asking questions that make politicians feel at ease. Once, Joe Rogan questioned a scientist about the effectiveness of mRNA vaccines for 3 hours. One of these is the adult Megyn, while the other is the court jester. Stephen Colbert once performed a choreographed dance for 3 minutes with a man wearing a syringe costume. While Colbert was engaged in ideological play, Kelly brought along receipts and pointed out how actual journalists were being demonized for raising questions. The only thing that Colbert is challenging is your patience. He is a content creator with a choir behind him, and the only thing he does is use pre-approved talking points with a laugh sign. He even managed to turn clapping into a punchline, saying that a sentence doesn't matter what it is, and then he waits while the audience erupts in applause as if Pavlov's bell has triggered it. It's not funny or insightful, it's just a room full of people clapping because they agree that you could teach squirrels to do the same thing if you give them enough. Almonds and MSNBC clips.
Also, with him, it's like, that's what brought him to the dance.
Yeah.
The reason why you're there is like, what kind of meetings did they have with him?
Yeah.
Like, what are we going to do here? We're going to play this straight? Or are you going to be cool?
It seems brave to me that Colbert's greatest thrill these days is slamming into anyone who disagrees with him politically. But then you realize that he's performing for an audience that already supports him. It's like inviting a vegetarian to a beef debate at a tofu convention. No risk, no resistance, just smugness on a platter. Meanwhile, Rogan has had people like Bernie Sanders. Ben Shapiro and Neil deGrasse Tyson are in the same room because, in contrast to Core, he doesn't fear that someone would say anything spontaneous, which is known as discussion. Colbert views speech as a monologue with ornamental breaks. Megyn. Kelly discusses politics with a steely demeanor and a willingness to annoy everyone. If Wikipedia and Reddit had a baby that could smirk, he says, he's so enmeshed in his own echo chamber that he could likely shout into a pillow and still receive a standing ovation. Let's not forget his amazing transition from someone who once criticized government overreach and hypocrisy to someone who now tells you to shut up and obey while a band plays off stage and he winks. The fact that he still believes he is subversive is the only thing funnier than his gags. 3 actions might be used to summarize his evening routine. Smirk, parrot, clap. He smirks to demonstrate that he understands the joke, parroting whatever story he believes would work best, and then clapping for himself through the audience. This is performance art, not comedy, for those who feel that NPR is too edgy.
But these people are all friends, like Rachel Maddow and Democratic Party politicians. They're friends.
Have you ever seen a video of Chuck Schumer and Stephen Colbert dancing together?
Oh, God, I can't even imagine.
You need to see it.
Do we have time?
You need to see it.
Yeah.
You need to just see them dancing together. and I feel the same way about comedians that you do about journalists. You know, like you can't be friends with those people because there's going to come a time where you have to...
You can tell the joke was put up with 5 tweets in CNN since even his writers appear exhausted half the time. The jokes drop on a smug trampoline with all the grace of a child, Chiron. Every segment seems to have been created in a lab by individuals who majored in political science and minored in improv, and the smug, ever-present Kohler wears it like cologne. Thick, overwhelming, and impossible to wash off. You could put him in a vat of humility, and he would still come out grinning. When Joe Rogan roasts something, you feel as though you're at a barbecue with a man who has opinions and isn't afraid to admit when he might be mistaken. When Colbert roasts something, it's a vegan potluck where everyone pretends tofu tastes good, and if you disagree, you're a bigot. One of them is authentic, while the other has a teleprompter and a messiah complex. With the dexterity of a surgeon, Megyn Kelly can cut through ideological nonsense by throwing glitter at it and calling it truth. All you need is a reason to pause applauding long enough to think, and while Joe and Megyn have spontaneous conversations with erratic guests, Stephen huddles in his corner with political pets who know exactly how to avoid anything that looks like a real moment. His interviews are more about nodding than they are about learning. It's like watching 2 bobbleheads agree to die.
Stephen Colbert grappling with that news.
Now, if, like me, you're wondering why the Department of Energy is the one making this judgment, it's because that agency oversees a network of U.S. national laboratories, some of which conduct advanced biological research. No. Bad energy department. No biolabs until you finish building your electric car charging stations.
As the unlicensed therapist writing affirmations on a chalkboard that reads, "We're better than them," Colbert's entire show is a therapy session for coastal elites. Even his defeats of political rivals are expected, and at this point, if Stephen sneezed on stage, his crowd would cheer him for being vaccinated. He never encountered a Democratic controversy that he couldn't dismiss with a sly smile and a turn to the Republicans, but his reasoning has more flaws than a fishing net, and yet it consistently receives a round of applause. Trump's bad Republicans are even more hazardous when it comes to questioning the narrative. Joe Rogan may not be to everyone's taste, but he encourages disagreement with his podcast empire and mushroom-fueled digressions. Colbert asks for backing vocalists. One of them is singing a solo to himself in the mirror while the other is conversing. Megyn. Kelly, whether you like her or not, challenges everyone. Watching Colbert discuss politics is like watching someone read a BuzzFeed article with the conviction of a preacher. There's more depth than a kiddie pool full of sentimentality. Let's face it, Colbert's brand of satire is the kind you order on Etsy. It's mass-produced, ethically sourced, and completely devoid of edge. He's like an iPad for your brain, sleek and smooth, and totally incapable of processing anything uncomfortable.
Right? I missed the apology for all the misleading he did.
I mean, that's the dedication to dogma. It's a religion for them. They can't give up the fact that they lied to people. They didn't let the truth get out. They silenced and harassed people who tried to talk about the truth. They just can't cope.
Stephen Colbert used to be funny, but now he's just loud and loud in that particular way that people get when they're surrounded by too many yes men and not enough honest feedback. No matter how many applause breaks he inserts into his monologue, or how many fake laughs he draws with punchlines that double as campaign slogans, he will never be the voice of truth, just the jester who forgot that he's supposed to poke the king and not lick his boots. So here we have Roger and Kelly with microphones and integrity, and Colbert with a smirk, a studio band, and a moral compass that points in whatever direction the DNC directs it to. One's a journalist, one's a podcast, and the other is a walking. Talking God help us if the Huffington Post ever allows Stephen Colbert to participate in a legitimate argument. But why would they? He already knows all the answers. Just ask his audience, his writers, his mirror, or the satirical ghost who is sobbing quietly backstage. The charm offensive of Colbert. Every joke lands like a lecture from your least funny uncle who still believes dad jokes are the best kind of humor, while Joe Rogan digs deep, challenges guests, and dares to explore messy truths. It's like watching a robot programmed to mimic empathy, awkward, forced, and completely hollow. His wit is a recycled meme served lukewarm with a side of smugness. Colbert treads carefully while delivering pre-written jokes out of fear of upsetting anyone other than Trump and Megyn. Kelly's jagged edges pierce his polished exterior, revealing a performer struggling to remain relevant at this juncture. Colbert is a cautionary story about what happens when satire becomes its own parody, not a late-night host.